Okay, you ready? Oh,
Almost.
almost.
You're all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Good morning. Welcome to the 587th Regional Board Meeting of the California Central Valley Region. I'm Mark Bradford, Chair of the Central Valley Water Board. I will introduce the other board members in a minute. In case anybody doesn't know, the bathrooms are out the door and to the left. And for people who want to listen or watch the meeting online, the board's customary webcast is available. We are receiving presentations and public comments here at the meeting and online through a Zoom meeting platform. If you're here at the meeting and intend to present or comment or think you might be interested in commenting, you should have filled out a speaker comment card. That's the blue card at the front of the room. If you're online and planning on commenting, you should already be in the Zoom meeting room using the meeting ID and password provided by board staff. If you have not already received this information, you can email us now at agenda5@waterboards.ca.gov. The email address is agenda followed by the number 5 with no space at waterboards.ca.gov. Include speaker comment in the subject line so we can follow up with you. For those in the Zoom meeting, you will be on mute and your camera turned off until it is your turn to speak. Our meeting host will then unmute you and ask you to turn on your camera if you have one. When you're done speaking and the board members have completed asking questions, you will be placed on mute and your camera turned off. I will now introduce the other board members as follows. On my right, I have Denise Cadera from Allensworth. On my left, I have Elena Lee Reeder from Sacramento. And at the end down there on the right is Sean Yang from Sacramento. And again, I'm Mark Bradford, also from Sacramento. State Board Member Nicole Morgan is also participating in this meeting and will give an update to the board shortly. I will now introduce Executive Officer Patrick Palupa, who will introduce his staff.
Right. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Welcome back to the Rancho Cordova office. It's been a little while. I do want to extend my thanks to the State Water Board and Eileen Sobek, who really helped streamline and get the authorization to rip out all of our old computers in this room, replace all the microphones, the cameras, the monitors, so that we can now hold hybrid meetings here in the Rancho Cordova office like we used to. And so this is actually the inaugural meeting of the upgraded boardroom. It was not cheap to put this together, but the state board absolutely supported it and wanted to continue to be able to provide both an in-person option and a hybrid option, especially to accommodate the size of our region and commenters from all sorts, from the Oregon border all the way down to northern LA County that may choose to participate in these hearings. So much thanks to the IT team, who also kind of spent hours and hours and days and months ripping out all the old equipment, testing the new stuff, and here we are today. If there are glitches, we'll let you know. We may have to pause here and there if anything kind of pops up on the radar that was unexpected. But again, it seems like we've got smooth sailing so far. And again, much thanks to everybody who made that happen. To my immediate left, I have Adam Lapitz, Assistant Executive Officer in the Rancho Cordova office. To his left, Mindy Maxwell, Executive Assistant to the board. To my immediate right is Jessica Yar, Senior Staff Counsel with the Office of Chief Counsel. Across the way, we have Chris Moskal and Bailey Toft Dupuis from the Office of Chief Counsel. And in front of me is Kennedy Knight, also from the Office of Chief Counsel. So we have our full complement of attorneys here today. In the audience, we have JJ Baum, Assistant Executive Officer in the Rancho Cordova office, and we have several supervisors who have been running the Fresno office since Clay's passing. We have Alex Olson, Dale Harvey, and Scott Hatton. So welcome everybody here, and thank you so much. Back to you, Chair Bradford.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's see, are there any communications from board members since the last meeting? Helena? Yeah.
Okay. On May 16th, I participated on a panel at the California Special Districts Association statewide conference discussing droughts, floods, fire, and climate adaptation with former Assembly Member Pedro Nava from the Little Hoover Commission and other panelists. And on May 19th, I had the honor of attending a ribbon cutting for Regional Sands Echo Water Project in Elk Grove. This was a very special moment, celebrating the upgraded treatment plant that prevents 30,000 pounds of ammonia from reaching the Delta every day. And I want to highlight Patrick Palupa and Adam Lapis and his team for all the hard work they did leading up to the new treatment facility. To provide a little in-house context, during the design and construction of the facility upgrades, there have been over 16 different permitting actions where Regional Sand and Adam and his team had to collaborate to ensure that this project met the permit's requirements. So this project is, and the benefits it will bring to the region and the environment are great examples of the good that comes out of our board's process.
Thank you. Sean, do you have anything?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Good morning. It's working. Well, I just want to say quickly, good morning to everyone, and thank you, Patrick, and the team that are involved in this renovation for make this boardroom available to us with the 21st century technology. So I'm really pleased to be here, and just yeah, excited to be here.
Denise?
Good morning, everyone. My board communication is as activity that's been happening, of course, in the Central Valley related to the flooding. On May 17th, we had the Department of Water Resources, some of their executive team come out to Allensworth to speak to us regarding the flooding that we've experienced this past season, and provided an update to us and informed us that we would not be in the line of flooding this summer, but it doesn't take away the potential for that to occur again next year. So we've been actively working with the Department of Water Resources and many other entities to ensure, and we're doing our very best to make sure that next year we don't have to encounter these activities. So it's a lot of work behind the scenes. I just feel bad for those communities that don't have the wherewithal to know what to do and how to protect themselves. Fortunately, in the community of Allensworth, we did. And following up with that, on June 6th, we had the Tulare Mosquito Abatement District come out and meet with us, because now we're in a mosquito infestation predicament that just like with the flooding, it was out of our control in both instances. When the flooding came and all the water was there, naturally, mosquitoes would be an issue. And we were the last ones to get notified that, not notified, we were the last ones that got any assistance in this situation. So needless to say right now, we are definitely impacted, but Tulare Mosquito Abatement and many others up to the California Department of Public Health, the Governor's Office of Emergency Services has been working with us. So we hope that stabilizing the situation will be occurring. And again, these are issues that in any other community, it would be a hard thing to handle, but we know the right buttons to push. We know the right people to call. We understand what needs to happen, and we have been able to move things forward. So kudos to the community of Allensworth and all the support that we've received during this crisis. It's not over yet, but this is the first sign of relief we've had since early March. And that's a lot to say for a community of 600 people that are impacted by such devastation. And then also, I would just like to add that I participated in numerous California Natural Resource Agency webinars pertaining to climate change, groundwater sustainability, anything I can participate in that would keep me more informed in the water issues that we deal with in our within the Central Valley. I'm always making myself available to participate. Thank you, and it's good to be back in our facility.
Thank you, Denise. Yeah, I'd like to add my thanks to Bob and Gina and others, I'm sure, that helped put this room together. It looks amazing. And I also wanted to call out Patrick and your team for you guys really stepped up with the vacancy due to Clay's passing down in Fresno. I know that's been a real added challenge on top of all the other stuff that's going on with the flooding and other issues in the valley. So I really appreciate that. Wanted to acknowledge it. I guess my only real involvement on outside calls or meetings since the last board meeting was participating in the chair's call on May 26th. There were a couple of issues that took a while to explain, but Michael Lawfer in particular made a very informed conversation about the Supreme Court decision on the Clean Water Act and wetlands. And I won't go into all of his points, but it will have impacts on the Central Valley resource allocation for many programs, especially NIPDs, I suppose. But that's an evolving situation, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that at future meetings. The other speaker was Morgan Carvajal, who is the appointment secretary for the governor. And she made an outreach to all of the boards that she would be interested in setting up meetings, so we understand what her priorities are for finding and assigning new board members to the process. And I do have my hand up right now to get a meeting with her, since we still have 2 vacancies on our board. And right now we're down to a quorum. With Nick being gone, we're kind of at the razor's edge here. So that's a priority for me. So that's all I had. And with that, I'm going to call on Nicole Morgan to give an update to the board from
Chair
the
Bradford, if
state
if
board.
we could
Yes.
pause and perhaps do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I skipped that. Absolutely. Denise, you can't get away with it. Thanks for the reminder, Patrick. Okay, now Nicole, give us an update from the state board.
There we go. Good morning, Chair Bradford and members of the board. Happy to be here this morning to provide a liaison report from the State Water Board. So Chair Bradford, you've already brought up the Sackett versus EPA decision. And so, yes, that did come out, and it was a decision on the U.S. Supreme Court to roll back protections of waterways and for waterways and wetlands. And so, there were 2 statements that were issued, one by Governor Newsom and one by the State Water Board. I'll make sure that you guys get links to both of those. One thing that I did want to bring up is that here in California, we do have our historic Puerto Colón. And so our waters within the state of California are still protected. We also have a wetlands policy. And so we, the state board still are, taking a look at all the implications, how it will impact resources, and just as we move forward, how we will continue to protect our waters, but we do have policies in place and regulations. And so that is a good thing here in the state of California. Another item I wanted to highlight is funding. Member Lee Reader, you did bring up the major state funded Sacramento project to provide environmental water recycling benefits. The State Water Board did provide $1 billion in loans to the Regional Sands Echo Water Project, which will upgrade Sacramento's wastewater treatment plant. So that was a great event, and it's really is a historic project here in the Sacramento area. And so thank you to the Central Valley Regional Board for, working on, I know a lot of hours went into working on that permit and pushing that forward. Under safer drinking water updates, on May 14th, State Board staff held a public webinar workshop to providing stakeholders an opportunity to contribute towards the enhancement of the Safer Administrator Policy Handbook. This handbook provides standards, terms, and procedures that apply to the selection and duties of appointed administrators for designated water systems as required by the Health and Safety Code. This is a newer program and policy handbook. I believe the first administrator was appointed in, I want to say like September, October of 2019, and the handbook came out the following spring. And so this is something that the SAFER team is continuing to update and to look to make a stronger policy so that we can continue to appoint administrators throughout the state where needed to help water systems. Under statewide nutrient management, on May 18th, State Board held a public workshop to present information on the impact of nutrient discharges on inland and ocean waters and activities underway and planned to address nutrients. Drought and conservation. And so, yes, this is a wetter year, but we are here in California where we do have, hotter, drier weather. We do have, historically, we have had periods of drought that do follow. And so we are still taking a look at, just how the drought continues to impact California. And also looking at conservation. At the June 6th State Board meeting, there was an information item on drought and conservation reporting into the Safer Clearinghouse. This is a new requirement that started this year. And so there were, so in partnership with the CPUC, there was a new reporting platform that was developed to streamline drought and conservation data reporting from public drinking water systems. The Safer Clearinghouse Drought and Conservation Reporting was first launched in January of this year. And so there were a lot of comments that were brought up. There is still some duplicative reporting. System was really launched to start looking at streamlining that reporting, looking at removing some of that duplication. And so looking at over this coming year, really looking at continuing that effort and removing that duplication. So as we get through this year here and the last reports go into the current system, the EAR system, going into next year, there should be less reporting that has to occur. We're still asking, our team to work with stakeholders to continue to identify those duplications and to work to continue to remove those areas where there's duplicative reporting required into multiple systems. So tribal beneficial uses on June 7th, there was an information held during the regularly scheduled State Board meeting providing information on potential addition of tribal beneficial uses to the water quality control plan for the San Francisco Bay and Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta Estuary, the Bay Delta Plan. There was also an environmental justice listening session on efforts to update and implement the water quality control plan held later that day. And so that was, if you did not get to tune in, that is one that I would say, go back and listen to. It was one of our best workshops this year, very informative, some good information that was shared during it. The addition of tribal beneficial uses to the Bay Delta Plan will provide for explicit recognition and reasonable protection of these beneficial uses within the context of the Bay Delta Plan, which is focused on in-stream flow and the associated habitat conditions and implementation through water right related actions. Tribal representatives and other interested persons will have the opportunity to provide input before tribal beneficial uses may be added to the Bay Delta Plan, including during public review and comment of the upcoming draft staff report evaluating potential changes to the Bay Delta Plan planned for release this summer. So at our state board meeting held this week, we held a workshop providing an overview of our clean water and drinking water attendant use plans. Every year annually, we take a look at our funding program, take a look at the supplemental intended use plans, and as well as the state revolving fund plans, and receive public input on these draft plans before we consider them for adoption. In doing so, a fundable list of projects is created for loan projects. We also, for any grant projects for small disadvantaged communities, those can be added throughout the year. We also take a look at the criteria for the projects and the funding amounts. And so we had our workshop yesterday, and we actually on the 20th. And then comments are due by tomorrow at noon. And so this is, again, it's an annual workshop that we go through. We heard some public comments there, and written comments are due by tomorrow. So yesterday we had a workshop on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And so 6 basins were deemed inadequate by the Department of Water Resources. Those were then referred to the State Water Board for further action. The State Water Board serves as the regulatory backstop. Throughout the process, our staff have been working with the department and providing comments on water quality and drinking water issues. And so these 6 were sent over. Those are Tulare Lake, Tule, Cahuilla, Kern County, Delta Mendota, and Chowchilla. And so yesterday we had the workshop. Our staff proposed a schedule for holding probationary hearings. And so that schedule is, so Tulare Lake would come in front of the board in December of this year, December 2023. Tule in January of 2024, Cahuilla March of 2024. Kern County of April 2024, and then there would be a break when Delta Mendota would come in front of the State Water Board in September 2024, and Chowchilla in October 2024. Our staff provided their reasoning for this order, and basically and went over it with the reasoning and the criteria of how they looked at it. How the process would go is that we've asked for the basins to continue to work on DWRs inadequacies that they have released. The state board can come and find that there are additional ones. State board staff will be issuing a report that they would potentially add additional within that, and this will be a public process. And so at yesterday's meeting, many of the basins did attend and explained what was within their current plans, provided comments, spoke to what their community engagement is, what their current plans are with working not only with communities, but then what their plans are if there are current impacts to wells within their basins. They answered several comments from state board members, and also what their plans are moving forward to come into compliance. And so just, as we're moving along, as they're coming up to the probationary hearings, they do have an opportunity to submit additional materials for that to be analyzed before these dates to be taken into consideration. And then 1 year after their probationary hearing is if they are still deemed to be not in compliance, they will then come under state board jurisdiction and start paying fees to the state board to help to oversee their basins. So yesterday also state board staff also released some resources. They released 2 FAQs, one for GSAs and one for pumpers. There's also a GSA lookup map if you're curious of what GSA you are within. There's also a water quality map tool. And so bring this up because these are within the Central Valley region. And so, if there's, interest, this again is a public process and, anyone within the region, encourage you to, follow the process and become active. My last item for today's update is just water use efficiency regulations. We are continuing to work on the long-term regulations. State board staff hope to release these draft regulations later this month. So this is part of the Making California Conservation Way of Life suite of regulations. So stay tuned for those to come out. And that concludes my report today. I am here and available if you have any questions.
I want to say thanks for and it's always stunning the breadth of issues that the state board is taking on. And I would note to Elena, some of those upgrades were done under Nicole's oversight for those 16 different permitting actions to make that treatment plant work back when she was with the Central Valley Water Board. So again, it's a gift that keeps on giving. I also want to express my thanks to the State Water Board for launching the wastewater needs assessment, getting some of the contracting up and running. As I've talked with this board before, there are over 400 wastewater treatment plants that discharge to land within the Central Valley. There's about 800 statewide, so about half of them are in our region alone. Many of them are desperate for upgrades and funding and have nitrate compliance concerns, among other things. So the state board effort, which it will take a while to get contractors to look at those issues, to have staff work on those issues to improve the resiliency and opportunities for recycled water in the years to come. I think it's a big step forward for our region to help understand the wastewater issues that we have in our community. So I do want to extend my thanks for that as well.
Thank you. That's definitely an exciting workload that I am definitely following.
So I had a question, Nicole, regarding the probationary hearing. So 6 basins from this process that we got started 2014, 2016, and it's been launched. And we have 6 that are going through a probationary hearing. Is that
6 to date? The Department of Water Resources is still going through. So these were from the critical basins. Department of Water Resources is still going through their analysis and working on other basins. Other basins may be referred to the State Water Board.
okay? Yeah, it's just amazing that we're at this point, and you would think that more would be in line. I mean, it's been a rollout, and so I'm just curious as to, going through this probationary hearing process and hopeful that the different GSAs will come into compliance. I mean, there was a reason for this to be launched, for GSAs to protect groundwater sustainability. And, I know that we've used money with SAFER and some of the other programs to assist some of the rollout and community engagement and things that are happening, and we're still falling short. So I will find my way participating in some of these activities when time allows. So thank you very much for that presentation today.
Thank you, Nicole, for the extensive update. Appreciate that. As you know, over the winter, we had horrific flooding in Elk Grove, Galt, and Walton. And I'm just curious, as far as flooding program go, do we have any sort of, or are you aware of any plan with the city of Elk Grove and other cities around the area to move forward to work on to prevent that sort of flooding in the near future?
I believe that those were, those are all under local jurisdiction,
Right.
but however, so I'm not aware of their plans. What the state board does, we have an emergency management crew that actually, well, group, program. And there's we have staff that whenever there is something that is happening, they do work with other groups, including Cal OES, Department of Water Resources, and, local flood jurisdictions, counties, in order to, make sure that, resources are out there and make sure that they are aware of the programs. The program that they would be working with would be with the Department of Water Resources and seeing, if there's any grants or any additional aid that could, help benefit the local flood control district there.
Okay, thanks for that. And follow up, just more so of a clarification. So the workshop sounds like it's very beneficial for folks. Is that open to the public?
Which work.
Well, you mentioned about workshops and
So all state board meetings are open to the public. Most of them are held downtown in the Cal EPA building. They're publicly noticed 10 days before, so they are definitely open to the public. And we also do live stream them over usually is the Cal EPA platform. You can also comment whether you're there in public at the Cal EPA building or via Zoom.
what is the current kind of like the outreach for folks to attend this workshops, if any?
So they're noticed on the state board website. We also have multiple email lists that go out. Our meetings are generally are July, let's see, so it's usually the first Tuesday, Wednesday, and the third Tuesday, Wednesday of the month. Our July one is the 5th, 6th. That one there is canceled. So I believe the next one, I want to say is the 18th, 19th of July is our next scheduled meeting. And so our agenda will be posted on our state board website. Also will go out via email to interested parties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I just have one question. I'm curious what the current state budget situation, how that will, if it will impact the state board or any of your programs specifically,
So whether or not it would impact the NPDS program
or any other.
or any.
program. Yeah.
And so, we're still waiting for, see how the budget lands. And so right now I'm not aware of, any significant impacts. But we definitely will keep all of our regional boards, updated, whether I do it through this platform or I, come and speak to you guys, in another communication. As soon as the budget is signed, we'll know then.
Okay, we'll hold our breath. All right. Thank you very much, Nicole. Do you have any comments, Ellen?
Hi, Nicole, it's great seeing you again, and thank you for the updates. I'm very much interested in following up on these Sigma changes as well. But I just want to say thank you for sharing with me your behind the scenes context over at Regional Sand. I really appreciate you showing me where your trailer was when you were working out there. And so thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. It was great to attend that event with you, and always happy to get out in the region and see see more or revisit spots that I've been to before. Always happy to, come and spend time at the region and within it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. It sounded like a nice victory lap, and I know a lot of work went into it, and there was quite a bit of fireworks at one of the meetings that Carl presided over way back when. So it's nice to see it come to fruition. Thanks again, Nicole. And moving on then to agenda item 4, we have Mindy, if you are an interested person and have not submitted a speaker card yet, please fill out a blue card at the table in the front of the meeting room. And has anybody done so, Mindy?
Well, we have one person, the first person, the Lathrop City Manager, Stephen Salvatore, is here in person. He'd like to address the board.
Okay. Good morning.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
Good morning, Chair Bradford, board members and staff. I am Steve Salvatore. I'm the city manager in Lathrop. I wanted to address the board this morning just to give you a little bit of background about Lathrop and our partnership with the regional board, or with the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We are a city of 35,000. We've been noted as the fastest growing city in the state of California. We are right at the gateway to the Bay Area. We are right at 205, 120, and I-5 junction. So we have a very good location. Our city is growing very quickly. Most of our city is brand new. It has all new infrastructure and so forth. I've been there for 16 years. I've enjoyed our partnership with the regional board simply because we have a lot to do and a lot of projects, and we've brought many of them to your staff. And I really want to commend our partnership with the regional board. It's been terrific over the last 16 years. We've done so many critical things. I want to point out maybe one or two. We closed down an industrial plant here a few years back. We were building a new tertiary treated plant, and the importance of closing that plant down was so significant. We were realizing years later that the significance of it. We had a secondary treated plant. The regional board, we worked with the regional board to build a new plant to get this effluent into our new plant, and that allowed us to expand the Crossroads industrial facility. Since then, Tesla has moved in 2014. They went from 400,000 square feet to 3.5 million square feet. The reason I bring up Tesla is because we are supporting green energy for the state of California. And one of the factories that we have there in Lathrop builds these gigantic shipping container sized batteries, and they produce them in the hundreds per week. These are shipped out to utility companies all over the state of California and eventually all over the world. Those will produce energy for peaking for industry. And so we feel like we're doing a great job of supporting the governor's efforts in building the infrastructure for green energy in California. Those plants wouldn't be possible without the work that was done here at the regional board, helping us decommission that old plant and get our new plant up and running. We've since removed a couple of other secondary treated plants to put them into our new plant, and we're currently under construction for an expansion to handle our growth. We've built 10,000 new homes in the last 10 years. We're building 16,000 to 18,000 more homes here in the future. Most of the people are Bay Area people. And so we've realized that they need transportation back and forth. And we're working on a $4 billion project with a consortium of agencies to do a light rail project to get people moved onto the BART system in Dublin. So we have a lot going on in our city. The regional board is a very big part of that. I really want to thank your staff. Your staff has always been professional and polite to us, even though I realize our development community and sometimes our staff irritates them because we want to move fast and we want to do things. But they've always been really professional and really cooperative, and we've really achieved a lot as a result of the regional board. I will say this because it's important. This agency is probably the best agency that we deal with. We deal with a lot of different agencies, and this one happens to be the best. So I will say that about the staff and how they work with us. So I appreciate it. We're very grateful that we have this partnership, and it's really produced a lot. There are some other things that we're going to be in front of you again in the future to improve our water quality. We're going to eliminate a few more of these secondary treated plants and things like that. We have our recycled water system, brand new recycled water system that's in place. So we feel like we're doing a good job of improving water quality in the state. And you guys are a big part of that. So thank you very much. Thank the staff and the board for all your support over the years. Been there 16 years and it's been great. So thank you so much.
That was refreshing to hear. You never know what we're going to get, but thank you. It's really a very positive reflection. I agree. Obviously, the staff here deals with a lot of impatient developers and other issues. And, you know, they are professional and responsive as possible, given all the hoops that they have to jump through to get these permits done and so on. So I really appreciate you coming up today and giving us a little pep talk there. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks so much for the compliment. I'll certainly pass it along to the staff that work on it. I know, just for the board's reference, if you're, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but you know, Lathrop, Tracy, Manteca, probably one of the bright spots in terms of the ability to kind of build housing and address the housing needs in California. And those communities are doing it with a forward look to protecting water quality as they grow. So we're very happy to be part of that kind of development within the valley.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in and thank the city manager for those comments. You're talking about building all the housing for the people in the Bay Area. When I moved to the Bay Area, Livermore was the stuff, and thousands of houses were built there. But you know, the fact that you have taken the lead as a community in that portion of the valley to address green energy and light rail to accommodate those people that are going into the Bay Area. I mean, it's commendable to see that communities are moving forward and this direction, and the fact that you acknowledged our staff and all of the work that they've done and partnershiping with you. That's part of the role that we do. And so it's good to know that things are moving forward and you have the support from our board and our staff. And thank you for those wonderful comments that you gave to our staff over the 16 years that they've been involved in working with you. Commend you for the work that you're doing for green energy.
I just want to add to what's already said. It's bring joy and happiness to hear, you know, stories like that, and that we are together working on projects that uplift our community, and the folks that are working together are really working efficiently and make things easier working on these projects. So it's really good to hear. So thank you.
Okay, moving on then.
Chair Bradford,
Yes.
we have
Oh,
one more
more?
person.
Okay,
We have Nick Jocelyn, who's on Zoom, but he's indicated he will raise his hand if he wishes to speak.
okay.
But we have Daniel Epperson, resident of Ione, that's on Zoom that wishes to speak.
Okay.
I don't see Mr. Epperson unless it's a phone number and then 437. Doesn't look like Mr. Epperson's. Jocelyn, you may unmute if you choose.
Yeah, Adam, talk to him.
So there is no Mr. Epperson.
Okay, so we don't have Mr. Epperson or Mr. Jocelyn then. Okay. Thank you, Jean. Anything else, Mindy? Is that's the, okay,
Nobody else.
all right, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5 regarding the executive officer's report. Prior to each meeting, the EO works with the executive assistant and the board's program managers to compile a report on the status of the board's programs, staffing, and many different initiatives the board is working on. If you are at the meeting and if you are in person at the meeting and have not submitted a speaker card yet, please fill out the blue card at the table in the front of the room. At this time, the EO is available to take questions on this report, if there are any.
Certainly more than happy to answer questions. I know a lot of work goes into the EO report, and we're still working on streamlining it to make sure it's totally useful, to the board, that's readable to the public. So we're going to continue those efforts to streamline and make sure that it's presenting all the information that we're doing in a very efficient way. That's accessible to anybody who's curious about what the board's doing. I will comment just briefly. I know initially we had scheduled a brief memorial for Clay at this meeting. The commendation from the California legislature was delayed a little bit, so we will be doing that in August, and certainly let his family know about that ahead of time. So they'll either be participating remotely or in person at the August meeting. And we had a fairly extensive CV salts update to the State Water Board earlier this week. I'll be providing the slides for that as well. Lots of participation, lots of questions from the State Board, doing a lot of work in that area. And that includes partnering with the State Water Board's team that are working on groundwater sustainability issues, really trying to take lessons learned. CV salts was certainly the biggest mail out that we've had in recent times, trying to reach just about 5,000 different permittees through the 2 mail outs of notices to comply. The State Water Board's folks have a similar type of outreach that they'll need to do as part of the probationary hearings as they move forward with that process. So we're certainly trying to have as many discussions as possible as DWR hands off, frankly, some of the tougher duties about probationary hearings to the State Water Board. So we're having a lot of those conversations as well, and certainly continuing engagement with SAFER, mostly behind the scenes, about cross-contaminant issues, about multi-contaminant testing when we do the domestic well testing. And of course, lots of conversations with communities and community advocates as we march towards the implementation of the management zones. The next big milestone will be the submittal of the management zone implementation plans in September, and that will trigger yet more engagement as we work through AB 2108 processes and CEQA processes to turn that into permits. We certainly hope to tee up a hearing on the management zone implementation plans, where this board will hear both the good, the bad, the ugly about those plans about 6 months after we get those and process them and understand what they're calling for. Because we're at this stage, we're talking about close to 1,000 confined animal facilities, which will be the subject of a State Board remand order. We're talking about 53 municipal facilities, hundreds of food processors and other land dischargers, and about 7,000 irrigated agricultural operations within the scope of the Priority 1 basins. Add to that drinking water systems, on-site wastewater treatment systems, and the 5 implementation plans, basically the big feasibility studies. There'll be a lot of discussion about what those contain and what the board will be turning into requirements as we kind of move forward with that process. And last but not least, certainly Board Member Kadara brought it up earlier. We are continuing to engage on a number of the kind of issues surrounding emergency situations, particularly in the South Valley, with Office of Emergency Services, Natural Resources, including DWR and Fish and Wildlife, CDPH and the State Water Board's Office of Emergency Services. And last but not least, I think what Nicole said on SACIT was very important. Here in California, we have the water quality laws to ensure water quality protection, whether a water body is a waters of the state or not. But I'm working on a work group of executive members that are going to kind of formulate our strategy for addressing those concerns as we move forward. NPDES permits, I think we're actually on pretty solid ground. There's very few NPDES facilities that would potentially be switching to land discharge, I believe. Most of the activity is actually happening in the 401 area, where the lines have gotten a little blurry in terms of what falls clearly under state authority and what falls under federal authority. I'll also send a link to an interview that Joaquin did with the LA Times, talking about the consequences of the SACIT decision. Focuses a little bit more on the Colorado River Basin. But between the press release, Newsom's statement, and Joaquin's interview, that kind of represents the state's view of the SACIT decision as we work on preparing internal and external guidance to implement this fairly significant shift in kind of federal policy for protection of wetlands. Big impacts, I think bigger impacts in the arid West than the rest of the state. And there's no secret about, and then the rest of the country, and there's no secret about that. We are home to a lot of intermittent water bodies that only flow partially during part of the year, and wetlands that occasionally dry up. So the scope of the federal jurisdiction being curtailed by the Supreme Court, and the subsequent rulemaking that will be engaged by US EPA and by the Army Corps is something that we'll be tracking very closely for the next couple of years. With that, any questions? I'm happy to answer them.
No, I just wanted to comment that our region is, of course, the largest region, and the executive officer's report, I've seen the changes, since my involvement on this board. You do a great job in putting together a lot of technical, comprehensive information, and that you've now made it more readable to the public. So, I just commend you and the staff for going out of your way to do extra to make sure that the information is available. People can understand what it is, and the managers do a tremendous job in just laying out the programming. All of the programs have a significant value to the communities and protecting our water, and laying out the information to where it's understandable and people can get a grasp of what's happening within the region. It's a lot of work. So I just commend the staff and you for doing a great job and delivering a report for the public.
No, I appreciate that. And I would be remiss to not give a shout out to Mindy, who herds the cats every 2 months and gets all the program managers to submit their reports and put it in plain language and follow the templates where appropriate. So
I too want to echo her sentiments and thank you and Mindy for putting it together. I know it takes a full day, at least a full day, to synthesize all that information. But I appreciate the new format, the context, and just knowing where we were, where we're going, and what's the game plan. The way it's written now, I zipped through it so quickly. It was shocking. So thank you for going out of your way to make it easier for us.
Thank you. Mindy, are there any interested persons that have submitted a request to comment on this item?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Agenda item 6, consideration of the minutes from the prior board meeting in April. We met on 27 April. And are there any edits or corrections to the April minutes? Hearing none, I get a motion to approve the minutes.
Lee Reader moves to approve the consent, the minutes from April 2023.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Mindy, can you take the roll?
Board Member Yang,
Aye.
Board Member Kadara.
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader
Aye.
and Chair Bradford.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, we have an uncontested calendar for agenda item 7. This is the time and a place for a public hearing to consider these items. If you're in person at the meeting and wish to comment on this item and have not submitted a speaker request, again, please fill out the blue card at the table in the front of the room. Mindy, has anybody submitted a request to comment on any of the uncontested items?
We have 4 people from representing Central Valley Meat Company for 13C. However, they've all indicated they'll raise their hand if they wish to speak.
Okay. And nobody's raised their hand?
Correct. I don't see any hands raised.
Thank you, Jean. Are there any late revisions to these items?
There are some late revisions for Mountain House. This was previously item number 12, but moved under item number 14. They're basically clarifications based on implementing State Water Board's new toxicity policy to clarify certain requirements. And we recommend approval of the item with late revisions.
Right. Yeah, we reviewed this one. Any board member questions or comments on the late revisions? Then can I get a motion to approve?
Are we going to approve all the uncontested items at one time?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the uncontested calendar with late revisions from item 14.
A second.
Thank you. Mindy, could you take the roll?
Board Member Yang.
Aye.
Board Member Kadara.
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader
Aye.
and Chair Bradford.
Yes. Okay, agenda item 8. David Barroso and Mark Barroso, Joe and Renee Barroso Dairy, Merced County, consideration of a stipulated cease and desist order, settlement agreement, and stipulation for entry of administrative civil liability order R5-2023-0505. At this time, the board will consider a stipulated cease and desist order, settlement agreement, and stipulation for entry of administrative civil liability order R5-2023-0505 for David Barroso and Mark Barroso, Joe and Renee Barroso Dairy, LP, Merced County. If you're in person at the meeting and wish to speak and have not submitted the speaker card yet, please fill out the blue card at the front of the meeting room. If you are on a Zoom platform and would like to speak, please raise your hand now. Is there anyone present who is contesting the proposed action and wishes to present evidence or testimony on this matter? Is anybody raise their hand or wishing to comment on this item?
So this will be a short presentation, just a couple slides.
Good.
It's rare that the board has asked has these type of items, but it represents frankly, a diligent prosecution of some violations at a dairy facility, an administrative civil liability that carries a fairly significant monetary penalty for the dairy, and a cease and desist order that puts the dairy on a track towards compliance. I wanted the board to hear a little bit about this item. I support the settlement and encourage the board to vote yes on the approved settlement that has been reached between the prosecution team and the dairy after a lot of good faith negotiations on both sides. But in terms of informing the board about this, I just wanted the prosecution team to share a few words about how they arrived at the ACL amount and the cease and desist order.
Good morning, board chair and board members. My name is Naomi Rubin, and I'm an attorney with the State Water Board Office of Enforcement, and I represent the enforcement staff in this case, which includes Assistant Executive Officer John Baum, Supervising Engineer and Geologist Robert Busby, who is recently retired, I understand, Senior Engineering Geologist Daniel Gaiman, and Engineering Geologist Brian Botsford. We're here today to recommend approval of a settlement agreement. This settlement agreement is comprised of 2 orders. And as Mr. Palupa said, that includes an administrative civil liability order, which assesses monetary liabilities, and a cease and desist order. Both of these orders resolve, if adopted, would resolve violations of the Dairy General Order. The prosecution team will provide you with brief factual background and go over the details of the settlement agreement. And we are here to recommend that you adopt the settlement. This settlement is the result of months of settlement negotiations, which involved careful considerations by the parties. The prosecution team believes that the settlement is fair, reasonable, fulfills enforcement objectives, and is in the best interest of the public. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Mr. Botsford. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Bradford and board members. My name is Brian Botsford, and I'm an engineering geologist with the Region 5 Confined Animals Unit. For this presentation, I'll be going over the facility description, regulatory framework associated with the facility, alleged violations related to the facility, our settlement timeline, a summary of the proposed stipulated order, and a summary of the proposed cease and desist order, and our recommendations to the board. This is an aerial view of the facility, the Joe and Renee Barroso Dairy. There is a freestall barn here through the middle, associated corrals on both sides. This is a storage lagoon that's completely full of sediment. This is another storage lagoon here. And then there are 2 settling basins here and here that are both also full of sediment. There are 2 unpermitted storage basins that were used as borrow pits that occasionally collect wastewater and are subject of our cease and desist order violations. The facility is comprised of 9 Merced County assessors parcel numbers, and the facility began operation in 1960. The owners of the facility are the Joe and Renee Barroso Dairy Limited Partnership and Mark Barroso. The operator is David Barroso. The current facility houses 676 mature cows, and they have a permit to have no more than 920 mature cows. The facility produces approximately 8.8 million gallons of wastewater each wet season. For the regulatory framework, this dairy is regulated under waste discharge requirements R5 2013-0122, which is known as the reissued Dairy General Order. It was adopted on October 3rd, 2013. So we are proposing that an administrative civil liability or ACL be adopted. The alleged violations resolved by the liability assessment are failing to submit annual reports for the 2017, 18, 19, and 20 reporting periods. We are proposing that a cease and desist order be adopted as well. or CDO. The main violations resolved by the CDO are failure to maintain adequate freeboard in the settling basins and wastewater storage lagoons on the property. Freeboard is the space between the operating water layer and the top of the pond berms. The second violation is improper disposal of dead animals on the property. They are supposed to be transported off property, but they have been burying dead animals on the property for disposal. The third is the use of 2 illegal wastewater storage lagoons, which I mentioned earlier, and they need to be either filled in or bermed to prevent runoff and unauthorized storage of wastewater. This is our settlement timeline. The board started their first inspection of this facility back in April 9th, 2013. And others in May 23rd, 2018, August 6th, 2019, and August 22nd, 2022. Notice of violations or NOVs associated with these inspections were issued on May 10th, 2013, August 8th, 2018, and August 12th, 2019. The parties entered confidential settlement negotiations in October of 2022. On April 20th, 2023, the proposed stipulated order was posted for public comment. And on May 22nd, 2023, the public comment period closed. There were no comments received. For the administrative civil liability, the parties agreed to a liability of $42,353. Since annual reports were not submitted for 4 years, there are a total of 4 separate violations. The 2017 enforcement policy was adopted on April 4th of 2017, which was used to evaluate the monetary liability associated with the violations. The enforcement policy establishes a methodology to create a fair, transparent, and consistent approach to liability assessment. The methodology involves a 10-step process to assess the nature, circumstance, extent, and gravity of the violations. In addition, with respect to the violator, it takes into account the culpability, cooperation, any prior history of violation, and the violator's ability to pay. The methodology also requires consideration of an economic benefit or savings resulting from the violations and other matters as justice may require. The prosecution team believes that the proposed assessment, which it reached during using the enforcement policy, is fair and consistent. For the cease and desist order, the discharger needs to come into compliance with the reissued Dairy General Order. That includes maintaining adequate freeboard in the settling basins and lagoons, proper disposal of animals, and discontinuing the use of the 2 illegal wastewater storage lagoons for wastewater storage and berm them or fill them in to prevent run-on. Using the information provided in this presentation, we recommend approval of the administrative civil liability and the cease and desist order. Any questions or comments?
That's quite a history. It goes back 10 years. Huh?
Yeah.
No, thank you. That was a good summary. Are there any questions up here?
I didn't hear, have the discharges at all made any to be in compliance, to address any of these concerns over the numerous years that they've had these violations since 2013?
Yeah, they've just started. They hired a consultant and they are planning on submitting future annual reports to us on a yearly basis. So like I said, it's been 5 or 6 years since they've submitted an annual report, and now they're just starting to get back into that process of submitting them.
Okay.
And they're also working with us on the CDO violations to come into compliance with the order too. So.
Okay, but is that because of the notice of violations you guys put forth to?
They were unresponsive to the notices of violations, which is why we decided to.
ACL?
Yeah.
Okay,
So this has got them started.
thank you.
Good. Are there any legal issues to discuss on this one? Helpful. Okay. Well, I think,
No legal issues.
thank you, Jessica. And there are no parties here for the dairy, right?
There are no parties here, but we do have somebody that would like to speak. We have David Barroso from Barroso and Sons Dairy that's indicated he'd like to speak.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify, he is the other party. So
I'm sorry. He's the, right. Is he going to speak on Zoom or?
Yeah, he's indicated he's on Zoom.
Okay. What, Gene?
Yeah, I do not see him on Zoom. Mr. Rosa, are you in the meeting? Under the more options at the bottom, you can raise your hand. Yeah, we have a phone 437. You may unmute. No.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start here. Good morning, board members and staff. My name is David Barroso. I'm one of the principals of Joe and Renee Barroso and Sons Dairy LP. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address this meeting this morning by phone. I would like to offer a little background. Since the inception of the annual reporting process began many years ago, I was a person on our dairy responsible for completing these reports and maintaining compliance. The process became overwhelming to me with family changes and the death of my father. I assume full responsibility for not staying in compliance and offer no excuses. Mrs. Rubin and her staff have been very professional, polite, and accommodating to work with. Through the development of this proposed CDO, the stipulations of the proposed CDO have been mutually agreed upon. We have retained professional consultant within the last year and began implementing required steps outlined on the proposed CDO. I have two requests for this board. One is that you accept the proposed CDO that has been mutually agreed upon, and two, you possibly show consideration to the fines that are assigned to our dairy. Mrs. Rubin and her team gave us the opportunity to submit tax returns to help determine fines, and we did not. I ask for your consideration on these two items. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning.
Thank you, David. If there's no further discussion and parties are in agreement on the CDO, I think we can close the hearing and move forward. So the chair will entertain a motion to adopt a stipulated cease and desist order, settlement agreement, and stipulation for entry of administrative civil liability order R5-2023-0505 for David Barroso and Mark Barroso, Joe and Renee Barroso Dairy, LP, Merced County. And I guess before we take the roll call vote, I think the CDO already stipulated the penalty amount, right? That's been agreed to as part of the agreement.
the administrative civil liability order is
Yeah, I'm
stipulated
sorry,
as
the
well.
ACL,
Yes,
correct.
yes.
Yeah, so I don't think we're in a position to modify that here at the board meeting. So with that, I propose that we take a roll call vote if I could get a motion.
I'll move to adopt the cease and desist order and the settlement agreement and administrative civil liability order.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Mindy, if you could call the roll.
Board Member Yang.
Aye.
Board Member Kadara.
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader.
Aye.
Chair Bradford.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. That was helpful.
Thank you so much for the discussion.
Even though it took 10 years, it's good to see that the resolution was agreed to by all the parties. So that's good. We will take a short break here. We have a couple more agenda items. Let's keep it short though, say back here at 10:25. Okay. Summer. I'm just coming, I'm just able to talk. So when I heard you, it's like, oh, let me give up. I went on a big bike ride on Saturday and I felt fine. Geico Management and Steve Geikus Trust, California Nuggets, Inc., and Golden Gate Nuts, Inc., San Joaquin County. If you're in person at the meeting, wish to speak, and have not submitted a speaker card yet, please fill out the blue card at the front of the room. Is there anyone present who is contesting the proposed actions and wishes to present evidence or testimony on this matter? Mindy, is there any? Oh, we've got one.
Well, I have Joanne Kipps who would like to speak.
Okay, and we have a gentleman at the mic too.
So Jean, can you verify
Yeah,
that
the
Joanne's on?
presentation. Okay.
I'm taking a quick look. Yes, I see Joanne. You may unmute yourself.
Hello?
We hear you, yes. We do hear you, Ms. Gibbs.
So we do have people contesting this item, so we should proceed with the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go ahead with the presentation and then we can hear from Joanne.
I should point out, permitting staff have not taken the oath. Should we do that first?
Let's see. Yes, I believe so. Let me see here. I don't have that in front of me. Mindy, do you have a copy of the oath that we can have these folks take? Or does anybody?
Yes, let me
I don't
find
see
it
it
in the
here.
script. Do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth? If so, answer I do.
I do.
Thank you.
I do.
Thanks. Okay, I think we're all copacetic now.
We're good to go.
Yes, thank you.
Wanted to make sure we cover that.
Yeah, thanks.
So good morning, Chairman Bradford, members of the board. My name is Scott Armstrong. I'm a senior engineering geologist and manager of the Waste Discharge to Land Permitting Unit here in the Rancho Cordova office, and I have just taken the oath. Permitting staff, including our program management, are here with me today to present revised waste discharge requirements for California Nuggets and Golden Gate Nuts. Geico Management and Steve Geikus Trust are the co-dischargers and collectively referred to as discharger and are not contesting this order. Comments were received from Ms. Joanne Kipps, a member of the public who is contesting the adoption of the order which has prompted this presentation. There are two snack food companies that share the same property. California Nuggets produces corn nuts, while Golden Gate Nuts processes almonds. Wastewater from both facilities is commingled and treated by the same wastewater treatment system, and therefore we refer to both operations as a singular facility. The discharge for the facility is currently regulated through Waste Discharge Requirements, or WDRs for common, order number R5-2014-0056, which was adopted in March 2014. The existing WDRs have a monthly flow limit of 2 million gallons and an annual flow limit of 16 million gallons. The discharger is requesting to increase their annual flow limit to 24 million gallons. For us to consider this request, the discharger's water balance demonstrated adequate treatment and discharge capacity. These issues will be addressed in the following slides. The facility is located west of Highway 99 within an agricultural area northwest of the city of Ripon. The facility covers approximately 22 acres. Wastewater is generated from processing corn and almonds, sanitizing washdown of related equipment, and boiler blowdown. Corn slurry, oil used to fry the corn, and sanitizing waste are hauled off site and are either disposed of at an appropriate facility or used as land stock feed. All solids are also trucked off site and are not land applied. Wastewater is collected through a series of screened sumps that convey commingled wastewater into a dissolved air flotation system, or a DAF system, to remove suspended solids. The wastewater is then sent through an oil water separator before being stored in a lined wastewater pond. From there, the wastewater is used to sprinkler irrigate 5.2 acres of land application area cropped with Sudan grass or various forage grasses. So here's a visual of the facility. Both businesses share the buildings where corn and almonds are processed and where wastewater is collected and commingled. The DAF system is located along the north side of the processing area and is identified in the pink square. For general reference, a DAF system works by injecting dissolved air under pressure and then releasing millions of tiny bubbles into the wastewater at atmospheric pressure. This process allows the air bubbles to adhere, actually suspended matter to adhere to the air bubbles so that it collects total suspended solids and biochemical oxygen demand and removes other organics from the wastewater. From there, wastewater is then conveyed to an oil water separator, which is shown as the small green rectangle on the west end of the property near one of the monitoring wells, which is a blue circle. From there, wastewater is then stored in the line aeration pond, shown in orange, before being discharged into the existing land application area, or LAA, shown basically on the western half of the property. The discharger recently purchased 7.88 acres of almond orchard along the northern boundary of the property to be used as a second land application area. Discharge of wastewater has not yet occurred to this new land application area, which is partly the reason for updating the WDRs. And lastly, stormwater is collected separately and discharged to an on-site stormwater pond, also shown on the west end of the site. Here we see a brief compliance history for this facility. The discharger first received a cleanup and abatement order in 2007, requiring improvements to be made to the wastewater treatment system and to eliminate overloading of the 5.2 acre land application area. The discharger began making treatment process modifications at that time, leading up to when the WDRs were adopted in 2014. When the WDRs were adopted, a companion cease and desist order was also adopted, requiring the discharger to address ongoing groundwater pollution occurring in violation of the basin plan and anti-degradation policy. In response to the enforcement orders, the discharger has made numerous changes to the treatment system and wastewater management practices. These improvements have included lining the wastewater pond, adding aeration and pH adjustment to reduce biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD. They've also installed a dissolved air flotation system, a DAF, as we talked about, to remove suspended material. And they are also hauling off high-strength waste and solids off-site to an appropriate disposal facility or for livestock feed. These actions have significantly reduced the amount of organics and salts discharged to the wastewater pond. And as mentioned previously, the discharger has purchased the additional land application area to help reduce overall hydraulic and salt loading. Discharge to that area has not yet occurred and is dependent on adoption of these WDRs. Additionally, the discharger has enrolled in the salt control program and has chosen to pursue option 2, the alternative salinity permitting approach. The facility is located in a priority 2 area for the nitrate control plan, where notices to comply are expected to be issued later this year. The list of wastewater constituents with the potential to degrade or pollute groundwater include salts, which are represented by fixed dissolved solids, or FDS, various forms of nitrogen, and biochemical oxygen demand, known as BOD. These wastewater constituents and parameters are consistent with similar food processing facilities throughout the Central Valley region. Now, this slide's a little busy, a little hard to interpret. So the important point here to illustrate is the downward trends of 3 key wastewater constituents since the facility improvements began in 2014. Salts are represented by fixed dissolved solids, or FDS, and total nitrogen is represented by total Goodall nitrogen, which is known as TKN. Excessive biochemical oxygen demand can deplete oxygen, resulting in dissolution of naturally occurring metals in groundwater, which will be discussed in a future slide. For each constituent shown, The black dashed trend line demonstrates decreasing and stable trends over the last 5 to 6 years. For example, average effluent BOD concentrations in 2014 were 3,800 milligrams per liter, as compared to annual average effluent BOD concentrations in 2021 at 1,700 milligrams per liter. This downward trend for biochemical oxygen demand concentrations is especially important when we discuss this later during response to comments portion of this presentation. Here we see a location of the 4 shallow groundwater monitoring wells at the facility. Shallow groundwater is encountered at approximately 12 to 26 feet below ground surface with a generally westward horizontal gradient direction. This positions monitoring well MW1 as an up gradient well, reflecting groundwater quality entering the property from the east. Monitoring wells 2, 3, and 4 are located on the west end of the property, with monitoring well 2 down gradient of the existing land application area and monitoring well 4 down gradient of the lined wastewater pond. And we'll take note of these positions, these well positions, because we're going to come back to this visual. I don't have this visual later on, but we're going to show some trend graphs for either the west end or the east end of the property. And as introduced earlier, wastewater constituents with the potential to degrade groundwater include salts, BOD, and nitrogen. So let's start with down gradient. And down gradient are the wells that are on the west end of the property down near the down gradient of the land application area and the line pond. The next 3 slides show concentration trends for averages data, groundwater data over the last 5 years. Nitrate is nitrogen and TKN are 2 forms of nitrogen, with TKN closely representing total nitrogen. As shown by the black dashed trend line for each constituent, concentrations are decreasing or have stabilized. The corresponding water quality objective for nitrate for comparison is 10 milligrams per liter, which is well above the range of the graph that we're showing. Continuing with our down gradient wells, as shown by the black trend line, concentrations of salts, represented here by total dissolved solids or TDS, are decreasing. The red line represents the potential water quality objective of 1,000 milligrams per liter. As shown here, iron and manganese in the down gradient groundwater exceed their respective water quality objectives, which are secondary maximum contaminant levels, shown in red. The presence of these metals in groundwater are considered a byproduct from the previous overloading of the existing land application area and the long-term use of the general area for agricultural purposes. These concentrations are also showing a decreasing trend. While actions to improve wastewater treatment can be seen relatively quickly in effluent quality, it can take months or years to see these changes in groundwater quality. When metals are present in groundwater, they are usually the result of anaerobic conditions due to over-application of organic rich wastewater. Dissolved manganese and iron concentrations are expected to decrease as this discharge blends with groundwater as it moves down gradient. Although these concentrations exceed secondary maximum contaminant levels or MCLs, secondary MCLs are based on aesthetic taste and odor limits rather than posing a direct human health risk. Now let's shift to the up gradient well, which was shown on the far east side of the site. This groundwater is considered poor with respect to salts and nitrate, represented here, salts by TDS. Concentrations for both constituents are shown increasing trends and above their respective water quality objectives, as shown by the red line. The quality of groundwater flowing into the facility from the east is out of the discharger's control. And as we've mentioned, it's likely due to long-term agricultural use of the area. In simple terms, the discharger previously violated the basin plan and anti-degradation policy by over-applying poor quality wastewater to the land application area, resulting in groundwater pollution. That situation prompted issuance of 2 enforcement orders and WDR's order R5-2014-0056. Since 2014, the discharger has made several improvements to their wastewater treatment process to reduce the on-site discharge of salts, nitrogen, and biochemical oxygen demand. These actions included adding additional treatment, lighting the wastewater pond, and increasing land application area acreage to reduce hydraulic and mass loading. Water board staff have analyzed monitoring data, which shows that modifications to the wastewater treatment system have improved effluent quality. As a result, wastewater constituent concentrations in groundwater have generally stabilized or are decreasing. And as mentioned before, the discharger has also purchased additional land to further reduce hydraulic and mass loading, which is contingent upon approval of these WDRs. The tentative WDRs were issued for a 30-day public review period. The discharger provided no formal comments on the order. However, comments were received from a member of the public, Ms. Joanne Kipps. Water board staff addressed Ms. Kipps' comments in a formal response to comment document, which was included in the final agenda package. The next few slides will briefly summarize the comments received and staff's responses. Concerns were raised that the discharge at the existing land application area has and will continue to violate the state's anti-degradation policy and basin plan. We do acknowledge that previous overloading of the wastewater to the existing land application area has impacted groundwater in violation of the basin plan and anti-degradation policy. In response to these violations, the discharger was issued a cleanup and abatement order and has made many improvements to their overall wastewater treatment process. These treatment system improvements and the purchase of additional land application area acreage are the basis for revising the WDRs for the facility. The basin plan recognizes that immediate compliance with water quality objectives adopted by the Regional Water Board may not be feasible in all circumstances. The basin plan also allows for additional time to be determined by the Regional Water Board to bring the discharge into compliance. In this case, facility changes have already resulted in improvements in effluent and groundwater quality, and more time is needed to confirm that these trends will continue. Issue 2, as discussed in previous slides, the discharger was issued a cease and desist order partially due to the hydraulic and biochemical oxygen demand overloading of the existing land application area. A recommendation was made to discontinue discharge to this area until iron and manganese concentrations in groundwater return to below their corresponding water quality objectives. Because the facility is located in a predominantly agricultural setting where shallow groundwater is influenced by surrounding crop use and related organic loading, the expected iron and manganese concentrations will reduce to below their respective water quality objectives. When that happens is not guaranteed. Actions taken by the discharger since 2014 to improve their discharge have already resulted in improved effluent and groundwater quality. Increasing and using additional land application area and better discharge practices to ensure that even application of wastewater are expected to reduce mass loading and further reduce impacts to groundwater. Therefore, continued use of the existing land application area is considered a beneficial use because the land is used to grow crops which help reduce effluent nitrogen loading. So based on using the total acreage available and the observed improvements in effluent and groundwater quality, conditions are expected to continue improving. Effluent and groundwater quality will continue to be closely monitored, and if exceedances occur, additional actions or an enforcement order may be necessary to bring the discharge back into compliance. Next, a concern was raised that the discharge will exceed the BOD loading limit. As illustrated a few slides ago in the wastewater quality slide, effluent biochemical oxygen demand concentrations have been decreasing to changes made in the wastewater treatment system. Increasing land application area acreage will further reduce overall wastewater constituent loading. Based on the loading calculations provided by the discharger and confirmed by water board staff, the projected BOD loading rate to all available land application area is expected to meet the 100 pounds per acre per day limit. The BOD loading limit proposed in the WDRs is appropriate and considered protective of groundwater at this time. Next, a request was made for additional groundwater monitoring wells to be installed around the new land application area to monitor impacts from the proposed wastewater discharge. Although wastewater constituent concentrations in the monitoring wells down gradient of the existing land application area are improving as a result of the discharger's recent efforts, staff added provision I-1A to the proposed WDRs specifically for the new land application area. The provision requires the dischargers to submit a technical report demonstrating whether additional monitoring wells are necessary to track potential impacts from discharges to the new land application area. If the evaluation does not recommend additional wells, the document must provide a technical rationale demonstrating that the existing monitoring well network adequately represents changes in groundwater conditions between the newly acquired land application area. Regional board staff will review the discharger's evaluation to determine whether we concur with their recommendations or if monitoring wells really are necessary. In conclusion, the discharger has made several improvements to their wastewater treatment system and wastewater management practices to address violations of the basin plan and anti-degradation policy. These actions have resulted in improved wastewater and groundwater quality. The discharger also purchased additional acreage for land application in an effort to reduce hydraulic and BOD loading rates. These changes justify revising the WDRs to more accurately reflect the current discharge and to allow discharge to the expanded land application area without further impacting groundwater. If the discharge continues to adversely impact groundwater, additional actions or an enforcement order may be necessary at that time. The limitations included in the proposed order were based on available analytical data, applicable SALT program requirements, and professional judgment for the protection of groundwater. Because efforts have been effective at improving effluent and groundwater quality and reduced mass loading, regional board staff recommend adoption of these WDRs. And at this time, regional board staff have submitted a late change to this agenda, indicating that the discharger has adequately satisfied the requirements set forth in cease and desist order R5-2014-0057, and that the revised WDR order as proposed rescinds previous WDR order R5-2014-0056 and the accompanying CDO R5-2014-0057. This concludes our presentation. We ask that the presentation and the case file be entered into the formal record, and we are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I know Joanne is on the line and wants to make some comments. Can we do that at this time?
Sure. Ms. Kipps, you may unmute if you like.
How much time will I be allowed to speak?
3 minutes.
Good morning, members of the board and staff and Mr. Palupa. I appreciate this opportunity to address the board regarding this tentative waste discharge requirement order. My concern with this order is that it provides not only for the continuation of discharge to a land application area, which has, because of past loadings, has caused pollution in groundwater for iron and manganese. It also increases the discharge flow limit. Now, granted, the discharger has added another parcel to dispose of its wastewater, but the issue is that the existing land application area is what we would call spent, used up. It is no longer able to assimilate additional organic carbon. This is evident by the extremely low concentrations of nitrate in groundwater down gradient and elevated concentrations of iron and manganese. These constituents basically are in the soil and are mobilized because of the anaerobic conditions or anoxic conditions created by the organic loading. My point is that if you allow this discharge to continue, you are authorizing continued pollution. And authorizing pollution, as far as I understand, is not something that waste discharge requirements should authorize unless accompanied by an enforcement order that requires either the discharge to cease or the implementation of additional treatment measures. So at one point, Mr. Palupa had indicated that my comments compel the staff to be truthful to the board. And here I am being truthful to the board in this, that if the board adopts this permit, it'll authorize continued pollution. And this assumption that the improvements that the discharger had implemented, while very good, are not sufficient to preclude the condition of pollution, and therefore the order is not consistent with the basin plan or the anti-degradation policy. I request that the board don't adopt the permit and remand it back to staff for corrections in accordance to my comments submitted as a result of the public review process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kipps.
Any questions?
Discussion?
Certainly, and I think that the from the board's perspective, from the board staff perspective, we've taken a look at the characteristics of the discharge. This facility has made significant improvements, addressed the most pressing water quality considerations, and will be continuing to do ongoing monitoring to ensure that if there are impacts, those impacts can be addressed at a future time. There are, Ms. Kipps is correct, there are iron and manganese impacts. Those are secondary MCL, so taste and odor thresholds would be exceeded. But those are not impacting any domestic well at this time. Those are not creating nuisance conditions. And I believe the existing permit and the monitoring provisions, the extension of land application areas to further spread out the waste and ensure that additional treatment is going to be occurring, satisfy our legal and policy obligations under the basin plan, under the water code and applicable policies. So I do recommend adoption of this permit.
Yeah, and I was going to have a question about a future monitoring, which you already addressed, that there will be future monitoring from the new land application area and that there are no downgradient receptors, correct? Yeah.
And I think it was highlighted in Scott's presentation that part of this order will require essentially an assessment of existing monitoring, and if no additional wells are going to be proposed by the discharger, they have to essentially have a technical expert demonstrate to the satisfaction of the board that the existing well network is sufficient to adequately characterize impacts to groundwater. So that is part of this order. Again, I think a significant step forward in compliance for this particular discharger.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
No questions or comment. I appreciate Ms. Kipps' public comments. She's been around for a while and she often makes her comments. And so I do appreciate that. I think that the sticking issue is the agriculture land that has been where a lot of the discharge and problems were created before the current discharge. And I think that concern is legitimate, but I also feel that based on staff's recommendations that efforts are being made to improve the water quality and the adjustments that have been made, the land that's been purchased to try to be in compliance. I don't think the staff would have made the recommendation had we not seen it fit that the concerns have been adequately addressed. And so those are my comments on that, but I do appreciate Ms. Kipps raising the concerns.
I too do appreciate the public comment. Quick question, I might have missed it. How long has us being involved in this whole process?
Can you restate the question? How long is?
I just want to find out how long we've been involved in this process.
Oh, the first enforcement order was issued in 2014, along with the one enforcement order, along with the WDRs. So it's, 9 years now.
2007.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
With that, I guess I appreciate Ms. Kipp's comments as well. And if this was the end of the story, I'd be more inclined to maybe kick the can down the road. But I appreciate that there's additional work to be done. There's recommendations on potentially additional monitoring wells that you guys will keep an eye on. And given that and the work that's already been done, which I think, it speaks to a lot of cooperation and probably a lot of back and forth between the board, staff, and the discharger, that there has been a lot of progress made. And I think my recommendation will be to move forward with approval. So if there are no further comments, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the revised waste discharge requirements for Geico Management and Steve Geico's Trust, California Nuggets, Inc., and Golden Gate Nuts, Inc. in San Joaquin County. And Mindy, could you call the roll? Oh, I need a motion. Yeah, let's get a motion.
I'll make the Lee Reader to make the motion to adopt the revised waste discharge requirements for California Nuggets and Golden Gate Nuts.
Thank you, Elena. Can you get a second? Yeah, basically saying that that's what we're doing. We're adopting it. Yeah.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Now, Mindy can call the roll.
Board Member Yang,
Aye.
Board Member Godara,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Aye.
Chair Bradford.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Scott. Thanks to all your staff.
Well, it just so happens we have another.
We're going to do the
Another
next one,
contestant order.
same group. Okay. So agenda item 10. At this time, the board will consider revised waste discharge requirements for Thomas Alexander, California Concentrate Company, San Joaquin County. Again, if you are in person at the meeting and wish to speak, please fill out the blue card at the front of the room. Is there anyone present who is contesting the proposed actions and wishes to present testimony or evidence on this matter?
Joanne Kipps has indicated she'd like to address the board.
Okay. And we'll take these comments after another staff presentation. Yeah, so why don't we go ahead with the presentation, Scott?
Okay.
Yeah, you took the oath already, so
Yeah.
yeah, we got
I'll
that.
still mention it though, for the record. Good morning, Chairman Bradford and members of the board. My name is Scott Armstrong. I'm the Senior Engineering Geologist and Unit Manager for the Waste Discharge to Land Permitting Program here in the Rancho Cordova office. And I have taken the oath. Permitting staff and program management are here with me today to present revised waste discharge requirements for the California Concentrate Company. The facility is owned. Oh, I'm sorry. The facility owner and discharger, Mr. Thomas Alexander, is not contesting the proposed WDRs. Comments were received from Ms. Joanne Kipps, a member of the public, who is contesting the adoption of this order, which has prompted this presentation. The facility began operating in 1935 and processes grapes for juice concentrates and barley for malt extract. While discharge to land is currently permitted through WDR's Order 98-136, which was adopted in June of 1998. Balsamic vinegar is also produced at the facility. However, all wastes associated with vinegar production are currently transported offsite for disposal. California Concentrate Company is located in San Joaquin County along the McCollum River, just north of Lodi, adjacent to Highway 99. The facility covers approximately 22 acres. Wastewater is generated from processing grapes and barley, cleaning the facility, and sanitizing the equipment. Stormwater captured on site is discharged to the wastewater treatment system. Wastewater is collected in floor drains equipped with screens and is gravity fed to an automated pH adjustment system, then to aerated unlined treatment ponds, and then finally to percolation ponds. The facility currently has a permitted flow of 7.5 million gallons annually, and there is no planned flow increase included in the proposed order. So here's an overview of the facility. Grape and malt processing occurs in the buildings on the northwest corner of the property, where wastewater is collected in screened floor drains and directed to the treatment system. Wastewater is sent through pH adjustment prior to entering the first of 3 aerated treatment ponds shown in blue outline. Processed wastewater is first treated in the unlined treatment ponds to provide mixing and aeration to reduce biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD, and odors. The treatment ponds have a total capacity of approximately 3 million gallons. Treated wastewater is then discharged into 3 percolation ponds outlined in green. The 3 percolation ponds represent approximately 4 acres of surface area. Now, I'd like to point out the McCollum Rim Beach RV Park is located adjacent to the west side of California Concentrate's facility. Up until 2019, the RV park was a source of numerous nuisance odor complaints. Recent operation changes at the facility, including rerouting the wastewater to first enter treatment pond T3 on the east instead of T1 due to the proximity of the neighboring RV park. Treatment pond T1 is now only used when flows are high due to heavy rains, facility upsets, or when additional capacity is needed. And we'll address the occurrence of nuisance odors a little bit later in this presentation. The percolation ponds on the south are located adjacent to the McCollum River. There are 10-foot high berms surrounding the ponds to prevent inundation from the river. The status of these berms will also be discussed later in this presentation. And lastly, as shown on the diagram, there are 3 shallow groundwater monitoring wells located around the treatment and percolation ponds, as shown in blue circles. And again, we will discuss those wells and the groundwater data a little bit later. Since 2000, California Concentrate Company has received numerous notices of violations for ongoing nuisance odor complaints and various other violations. Most of the odor complaints were made by residents of the neighboring McCollum Beach RV Park. Here we have a brief compliance history of the facility. After adoption of the WDRs in 1998, the discharger received 10 notices of violation over a 20-year period, which included numerous odor complaints. In February 2019, a cleanup and abatement order was issued requiring the discharger to discontinue the on-site discharge of vinegar waste, implement measures to reduce objectionable odors, and to make operational changes to bring the discharge into compliance with the WDRs. The cleanup and abatement order also required a combination of work plans and evaluations to identify appropriate actions to be taken by the discharger to improve effluent quality, reduce impacts to groundwater quality, and eliminate offsite odors. 3 additional notices of violation were issued in late 2019 as the discharger was modifying the wastewater treatment system processes. And lastly, I want to note out that since it should be noted that no additional odor complaints have been recorded or notices of violation have been issued since January 2020. In response to the cleanup and abatement order, the discharger has made numerous changes to the treatment system and wastewater management practices. The biggest change was the offsite disposal of all vinegar waste, which up until then had was considered an unauthorized discharge in violation of the WDRs. Discharge of vinegar waste into the treatment system resulted in low wastewater pH, the corrosion of portions of the collection system piping, and generation of objectionable odors. Additional wastewater management improvements made include reduced sanitizing chemical usage, the installation of screens on floor drains to reduce the amount of organics discharged to the ponds, and better pond management to reduce odors. These changes are ongoing and the discharger continues to be proactive in managing their discharge. The list of wastewater parameters with the potential to degrade or pollute groundwater includes salts, represented as fixed dissolved solids and electrical conductivity, various forms of nitrogen, and biochemical oxygen demand. These constituents are consistent with similar grape processing facilities throughout the Central Valley region. So again, we're going to have a couple of trend slides here for the wastewater first. The important point is the downward trend of key wastewater parameters since wastewater management and procedural modifications were made in 2019. This is also after the discharge of vinegar waste was discontinued and the actions discussed in the previous slides began to be implemented. For 3 of the constituents shown, the black dashed line demonstrates decreasing trends over the last 3 years. For example, average effluent BOD concentrations in 2017, prior to any of the corrections made, was 810 milligrams per liter, while average annual effluent BOD concentrations in 2021 were 245 milligrams per liter. The only increasing trend is total Cadol nitrogen, or TKN, which is the organic fraction of total nitrogen. And I'll be discussing that issue when we get into the groundwater slides. So here we see the location of 3 shallow groundwater monitoring wells at the facility. Shallow groundwater generally ranges from 15 to 40 feet below ground surface, with a general horizontal flow direction to the north. This positions monitoring well MW3 as an upgradient well, reflecting groundwater quality entering the property. Monitoring wells MW4 and 5 are located down gradient of the treatment ponds, which are shaded in blue. And as discussed earlier, wastewater constituents with the potential to degrade groundwater include salts, represented by total dissolved solids and electrical conductivity, and also total nitrogen. The majority of wastewater constituents in groundwater are showing stable trends, indicating that the changes made at the facility beginning in 2019 have stabilized groundwater. However, there are some ongoing concerns for groundwater as shown in this table. For total dissolved solids, manganese, and electrical conductivity in the down gradient monitoring wells. While actions to improve wastewater treatment can be seen relatively quickly in effluent quality, it can take months or years to see these changes in groundwater. To address these concerns, the WDRs include a compliance schedule, provision I-1A, which requires the discharger to continue monitoring groundwater and reevaluate groundwater conditions in 5 years. If wastewater constituent concentration trends are increasing over that time period, the discharger will be required to submit a work plan that describes additional actions that will be taken to address groundwater impacts. So while these constituents are currently a concern, we know the issues will not be quickly rectified, and it will take time before true improvement can be confirmed. If groundwater conditions do not continue to improve after 5 years, additional actions or enforcement orders may be necessary at that time. In addition, groundwater salinity will be addressed as part of the CV Salts program. The discharger has enrolled in the salinity control program and has selected option 2, the prioritization and optimization study. Due to low regional nitrate concentrations in drinking water wells in the surrounding area, the facility is located in an unprioritized area for the nitrate control plan. One common food processing constituent that can pose a threat to groundwater is through various forms of nitrogen. In this case, nitrogen in the effluent consists almost exclusively of TKN, which has an increasing concentration trend in the effluent. In comparing this data to nitrate as nitrogen concentrations in groundwater show that the groundwater concentrations trends are decreasing for both components of total nitrogen. TKN and nitratus nitrogen in groundwater are not a concern at this time. The low concentrations of TKN and nitratus nitrogen in groundwater indicate that the vadose zone is adequately supporting the nitrification and denitrification processes. Also worth noting, nitratus nitrogen concentrations in groundwater are well below the primary maximum contaminant level water quality objective of 10 milligrams per liter, which is well above the scale shown on the diagram. And just for reference, the green spike of nitrate nitrogen in 2019 is less than 5 milligrams per liter. As discussed in this presentation, the discharger has been issued numerous notices of violation and an enforcement order due to several violations of the existing WDRs. The biggest or most significant violations included discharging vinegar waste into the treatment system and producing offensive odors. In response to these violations, the discharger has made several changes to their wastewater management practices and treatment system. As a result of these changes, we've already seen improvements in wastewater quality, and no odor complaints have been received in over 3 years. In fact, a representative of the neighboring McCallum Beach RV Park recently informed Water Board staff of their appreciation of the discharger's efforts and cooperative, the level of cooperation and in keeping good communication with them. So as we've discussed, it does take time to see improvements in groundwater quality as a result of wastewater management changes. This is why the proposed WDRs includes a compliance schedule requiring the discharger to submit a groundwater compliance assessment report. If after 5 years it's shown that impacts to groundwater have not been reduced, additional actions or an enforcement order may be necessary at that time. Now let's address comments received during the public review of the tentative WDRs. As I mentioned before, the discharger provided no formal comments on the tentative order. Comments were received from a member of the public, Ms. Joanne Kipps, during the 30-day public comment period. Water Board staff addressed Ms. Kipps' comments in a formal response to comment document, which was included in the final agenda package. The next few slides will briefly summarize the comments by topic and staff's responses. Concerns were raised that upon adoption of these revised WDRs, the regional board would be authorizing the discharge of designated waste and will continue to allow violations of the basin plan and state anti-degradation policy. Now, we acknowledge that previous discharge activities impacting groundwater were in violation of the basin plan and the anti-degradation policy. We also recognize that the unpermitted discharge of vinegar wastewater could also be considered designated waste. In response to the violations, the discharger was issued a cleanup and abatement order to bring the discharge back into compliance. This discharger has made improvements to their overall wastewater treatment process, which is now being reflected in improved effluent quality. Chapter 3 of the Basin Plan states, quote, water quality objectives are to be achieved primarily through the adoption of WDRs and cleanup and abatement orders, end quote. The Basin Plan recognizes that immediate compliance with water quality objectives adopted by the regional board may not be feasible in all circumstances. Therefore, the Basin Plan also allows additional time to be determined by the regional water board to bring the discharge into compliance. In this case, facility changes have already resulted in improvements in the effluent and groundwater quality, and more time is needed to confirm that these trends will continue. The proposed WDRs includes a compliance schedule that requires the discharger to submit a groundwater compliance assessment report after 5 years of continued groundwater monitoring. This is necessary to determine the effectiveness of wastewater treatment system improvements and the resulting impact on groundwater quality. The groundwater compliance assessment report will be used to determine whether additional actions are required to further reduce impacts to groundwater. Next, it was suggested that the percolation ponds should be regulated as land application areas. Land application areas typically have requirements related to land use, such as agronomic loading for crop use and other limitations that are not applicable to pond systems. Land application areas are primarily used for irrigation and nitrogen uptake, which is not the case here. Next issue. Ms. Kipps asked for a comparison between using BOD loading limits normally used to regulate land application areas with an effluent limit and how the proposed effluent limit is considered protective of groundwater and how BOD overloading will be addressed. To address the high BOD concentrations in the effluent, the discharger added screens to reduce organics in the wastewater and installed aerators in the treatment ponds to oxygenate the wastewater. These changes have reduced BOD concentrations as shown in the previous wastewater slides. BOD in effluent is regulated as a loading limit to the land application areas to maintain crop health. But for pond systems, BOD is regulated as an effluent limit, which is a performance-based limit. The effluent limit was set using data collected after improvements were made to the facility and does not allow for increasing BOD concentration trends. To meet this limit, the treatment system is expected to be operated efficiently. Metals that can be mobilized in groundwater due to high BOD concentrations include iron and manganese. Increasing iron and manganese concentrations and the production of odors are indicators that BOD is not being managed appropriately. The compliance schedule in the proposed WDRs requires the discharger to conduct a groundwater evaluation in 5 years to determine the effectiveness of facility improvements. Staff feel that the proposed BOD effluent limit is appropriate and is considered protective of groundwater at this time. The next issue pertains to clarification on the long-term storage of pond sludge. The comment specifically references compliance with discharge specification E1, which requires the wastewater to remain within the permitted treatment system, and discharge specification E2, which requires all systems to be operated to optimize the quality of the discharge. Regarding discharge specification E1, it is important to note that percolation is part of the treatment process and does not represent an uncontrolled or unpermitted discharge that is occurring outside of the treatment system. Concerning discharge specification E2, sludge that accumulates at the bottom of a pond is an expected part of an operating pond system. Pond sludge is not indefinitely stored and is appropriately regulated, as the WDRs do not allow the accumulated sludge to reduce a pond's functional capacity. Also, when sludge is removed from the pond, it must be transported offsite and documented. It cannot be land applied. Prior to removing any sludge, the discharger must submit a sludge cleanout plan, which describes how the sludge will be managed in order to stay in compliance with proposed WDRs. And I'd like to add one more thing about pond sludge here. Some sludge accumulation in a pond, it can be beneficial. It can reduce percolation rates, allowing for more aeration time prior to discharging to more traditional percolation ponds, which are not intended to accumulate sediment or sludge. In the percolation ponds, sludge and sediment accumulation slows percolation time, which can result in wastewater taking too long to percolate, increasing the potential to produce objectionable odors. The proposed WDRs provides information on the discharger's maintenance procedures to better maintain percolation rates. Next, a request was made to issue a standalone enforcement order, such as a time schedule order, that requires the discharger to implement additional management practices to bring the discharge into compliance. As noted earlier in this presentation, the basin plan recognizes that immediate compliance with water quality objectives adopted by the Regional Water Board may not be feasible in all circumstances. The basin plan also allows for additional time to be determined by the Regional Water Board to bring the discharge back into compliance. In this case, facility changes have already resulted in improvements in effluent and groundwater quality, and more time is needed to confirm that these trends will continue. A compliance schedule for additional groundwater evaluation is included in the proposed WDRs. At this time, staff do not feel it is necessary to issue a standalone time schedule order. Next, Ms. Kipps pointed out that the facility's berms are inadequate to protect the ponds from river flooding. As previously mentioned, the berms surrounding the ponds may not meet discharge specifications E3, which requires, quote, all conveyance, treatment, storage, and disposal systems for wastewater shall be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to prevent inundation or washout due to floods with a 100-year return frequency, end quote. Provision I-1B in the proposed WDRs includes a compliance schedule that requires the discharger to evaluate the berms. The required evaluation shall determine the current status of the berms in relation to a 100-year return frequency and what steps will be taken by the discharger to meet discharge specifications E3. Ms. Kipps requested additional constituents be monitored in the effluent and groundwater to provide more information on the effectiveness of the wastewater treatment. Staff agreed to adding sulfate, potassium, total chromium, and nickel to the proposed monitoring and reporting program for both the effluent and groundwater. In conclusion, the discharger has made several improvements to their wastewater treatment system and wastewater management practices to address violations of the basin plan, anti-degradation policy, and WDRs, existing WDRs. These actions have already resulted in a reduction of offensive odor complaints, improved effluent and groundwater quality. Revised WDRs are needed to better reflect the discharger's current wastewater treatment system and management practices, and require a compliance schedule for additional facility evaluations. As discussed in an earlier slide, the basin plan allows time for the discharger to come into compliance. So therefore, we're not letting them off the hook. The proposed WDRs require a groundwater compliance assessment plan and a berm evaluation plan. The limitations included in this order were based on available analytical data, applicable salt control program requirements, and professional judgment for the protection of groundwater. If these issues have not been resolved in the designated timeline, additional actions or an enforcement order may be necessary for the protection of groundwater. Because efforts have been effective at improving effluent and groundwater quality, regional board staff recommend adoption of these WDRs. At this time, Regional Water Board have submitted a late change to the agenda item indicating that the discharger has adequately satisfied the requirements set forth in cleanup and abatement order R5 2019-0700, and that the revised WDRs order as proposed rescinds the previous WDRs order 98-136 and cleanup and abatement order R5-2019-0700. This concludes our presentation. We ask that this presentation and the case file be entered in the formal record, and we are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's a nice comprehensive summary again. Thank you. I had one question. Is the ongoing monitoring and reporting requirements, are they semi-annual, or how frequently will you be receiving semi-annual?
I think a lot of the monitoring is quarterly. Is that correct?
Usually, I want to say the sampling is quarterly and the reporting might be semi-annual, but I don't remember off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
that's fine.
It's going to be somewhere in that.
And so if there were some trends that reversed from what you presented, you would notice that, and we'd be back before the board likely.
Yes.
Okay.
Probably the quickest indicator is the generation of offensive odors, because we've got residents living right next door.
Yeah.
And so that's been our measuring stick for now.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the question about the adjustments in helping to reduce the odor and complaints, but you indicated that there's not been any odor or complaints since 2020, so that's good. And then you indicated if after 5 years, no improvements, further action may be taken. And I don't know if this ties into the question he just asked, but is there any opportunity prior to that 5 years, if you see any areas that are not being in compliance, that you would address it prior to that 5-year period?
Oh yeah, we have the tools to respond accordingly if concentrations are increasing more rapidly. And so we don't need to wait 5 years. If there's a problem, we'll respond
Okay,
a little quicker.
okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much.
Now, does Ms. Kipps want to make a comment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll give you 3 minutes again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to address the board on this discharge. The staff presentation failed to mention that the discharge to the treatment ponds contains iron and manganese many, 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 many times the water quality objective, which is not normal for food processing wastes in general. I think in large part, the facility was built in 1935. The wastewater is acidic and it's dissolving metals from the piping that may not be of particular quality to resist corrosion. And so if staff were to look at it, it should have been identified as a designated waste because the discharge concentrations of iron and manganese far exceed the water quality objective. And the groundwater concentrations of iron and manganese are already exceeding the water quality objective. Now, the water quality objectives for iron and manganese have been long-standing. It's not a new requirement that would require additional time for a discharger to come into compliance. It's been there for decades. And just because it's a secondary water quality, secondary drinking water standard doesn't negate the fact that it is a water quality objective, that the waste discharge requirements is supposed to regulate the discharge so that it would not cause an exceedance of water quality objectives. This discharge is, by all consideration, a discharge of designated waste that should be subject to Title 27 prescriptive standards of containment. The board should prohibit the discharge altogether. It's not only a discharge of designated waste to unlined ponds, but it's in a regulatory floodplain. And there's just so many things that are wrong with this discharge. And the notion of an unlined pond not being a discharge to groundwater, I don't know where staff is coming from in this regard. Because it's unlined, the quality of the wastewater that's actually entering groundwater is worse than what it's going into the percolation ponds. From the information in the WDRs, it appears that the quality of the effluent going into the treatment ponds is twice the strength of high-strength municipal sewage. And so generally speaking, you wouldn't have a municipal sewage treatment plant with unlined ponds as being your primary treatment pond. So this discharge does not reflect best practicable treatment and control. It's causing pollution, and the regional board should prevent this discharge from happening. Give it a time schedule to have it cease, but it's not consistent with the basin plan or the anti-degradation policy, and not consistent with the California Water Code. So thank you very much for allowing me to address the board.
Staff to respond to those last comments.
Yeah, we absolutely acknowledge what they did in the past was in violation of the WDRs. Part of their problem was putting the balsamic vinegar waste into the wastewater treatment system, which really messed up the pH of that wastewater. And because the facility is so old, they do have a lot of cast iron piping still, which the discharger and I agree that would likely played a huge part in the increase in iron and manganese. But we've also want to give them a little bit of time to see the changes that they've made and how it's impacting groundwater. And on top of it, we're also having them analyze for total chromium and nickel to add to the information. Is it coming from the pipes? Right now, we're not sure, but they've made enough changes that we feel comfortable to move ahead, and we're still holding them to a compliance schedule. We're not letting them walk away. So we acknowledge they've impacted groundwater. There's no getting around that. And then they've been issued enforcement orders. And now we're saying you've done enough to go ahead and get new WDRs, but we're still holding you to a few things. And one of them may be the piping issue, but they have addressed the pH issue. They've been fine with their pH numbers since, I guess, almost 2019, I guess. And I do want to add a little bit that this discharger has been very cooperative. I have met with the McCollum Beach RV Resort people that are right next door. They're the ones that had most of the problems. And they've been very happy. So I just wanted to throw that in as the discharger has been very proactive. But yes, we acknowledged it was a problem. It could still be going up, could still be an ongoing problem, but we're not just walking away.
Hi, to follow up, how long would it take to figure out if it's the piping issue?
I don't really have a timeline for that, but what I can say is that concentration shouldn't be increasing. So, we may hit kind of a stabilized concentration trend. But as to whether or not we expect to see those numbers ever go back down is a wait and see game right now.
And I'll correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the complexities of this particular case is it's right next to the McCollum River. If you ever kind of drive north on 99, it's right north of Lodi. It is right there. Like you'll see the sign. It's about 50 feet from the highway is where this facility is. But the upgrading and monitoring well is actually exceeding the water quality objective. It's upgrading it well for iron and manganese, which is a little bit of a puzzle there too, because it would be expected to be influenced by the McCollum River, which has virtually no iron and manganese in it. Certainly this facility has had impacts. It's partly why this team is suggesting that you do quarterly monitoring for a number of years. If we see increasing trends, then they're going to look to upgrade their facility. They're going to look to try and have corrosion resistant pipes. It's a huge capital cost. It might kill this operation, to be honest. We've seen similar facilities go under that type of burden, but we want to give it a little bit of time. Let's understand what the dynamics of its discharge are. Again, it is secondary MCL. If this was an exceedance of nitrate and there was a down gradient well that was impacted today, you'd be in a very, very different circumstance. I think the water code and existing policies give us that flexibility to say, look, let's take some time, understand where the sensitive receptors are, if there are continuing impacts, before we essentially turn the screws on this facility and say, rip all your plumbing out, replace it all, and potentially go out of business. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the policy decision. It's reason why I'm recommending this. Again, the other big issue, and as kind of Dina has alluded to, the RV park better be protected from odors. That's kind of rule number one. Odors produced as in a treatment pond as part of the facility operations, unacceptable. So the RV park has not had odor complaints. I even checked their Yelp page just to make sure, and sure enough, there was a bunch of odor complaints about 5 years ago. With the changes in the process, that stopped. And so as long as that continues, we'll take a look at the groundwater monitoring, see if we can see an improvement, see if we can have a better understanding of where the iron and manganese are going, if the new BOD limitations that are in this order are adequately protective, they've changed the way they operate their ponds. Hopefully that should have the impacts that we expect to see, and limit the degradation that's happening at this facility.
Again, Ms. Kipps, I want to thank you for your comments, and I think you've been a former staff member and a community advocate for improved water quality. Some of your comments and recommendations have been incorporated into the program, and so that voice of yours is making a difference. And so I want to thank you for that, and thank the staff for your presentation as well.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Ms. Kipps, and again, thanks to the staff. I'm curious why that upgradient well has got manganese and iron in it, and if it's really being influenced even up gradient of the pond somehow. But as long as there's additional monitoring going on, and the new WDR will accommodate any changes that are necessary, I'm comfortable with the proposal as it stands. So any other comments, or can I get a motion then? Motion for approval of the revised WDR and the rescission of cleanup and abatement order R5 2019 0700. A motion?
And that would be with the late revisions.
Okay. Motion to adopt revised waste discharge requirements for California Concentrate Company along with the revised revisions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. So Mindy, could you call the roll?
Board Member Yang,
Aye.
Board Member Kadara,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Aye.
Chair Bradford.
Yes. And thank you.
That's not going anywhere.
I think we got one more. Oh, you're out. Okay. So will there be a staff presentation on agenda item 11, Patrick?
Municipal general order.
The general order, yeah. There will be that, yeah, the short staff presentation, right? Yeah. Okay. So agenda item 11. At this time, the board will consider an NPDES general order renewal for municipal wastewater discharges that meet objectives, criteria at the point of discharge to surface water. In other words, the municipal general order. Again, if you're a person at the meeting and wish to speak, please fill out the blue card available on the table in the front of the room. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with the notice of public hearing and the meeting procedures published with the meeting agenda. At this time, evidence should be introduced on whether the proposed action should be taken. All persons expecting to testify, raise your right hand and take the following oath. There it is. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give us is the truth? If so, answer I do. Thank you. And please state your name, address, affiliation, and whether you have taken the oath before testifying. And then following the staff presentation, interested persons will be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board, and a timer will be used. If any designated party is having technical difficulties, please notify us immediately by either raising your hand virtually on Zoom under the participants tab, or if you are using a phone by pressing *9. You may also send an email to agenda5@waterboards.ca.gov. If there are technical difficulties, we will stop the hearing to address those issues and will not resume until all designated parties can participate. Okay, so why don't we go ahead with the staff presentation?
Good morning, Chair Bradford and members of the board. My name is Ann Walters. I'm an environmental program manager here in the Rancho Cordova office, and I have taken the oath. So the next item for your consideration is the renewal of a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, general order for municipal wastewater discharges that meet objectives or criteria at the point of discharge to surface water, also known as the Municipal General Order, or MGO. So today we will provide an overview of the Municipal General Order, the changes to the proposed renewal, major public comments received, followed by staff responses, and Central Valley Water Board staff recommendation. So a general order provides a standard approach for similar types of discharges. The municipal general order was developed to cover similar high-quality discharges of treated municipal water that are able to meet all of their effluent limits at the point of discharge without the need for dilution. Coverage under the municipal general order allows for a simplified permit application process and a more efficient permit development process through issuance of notices of applicability versus issuance of 20+ individual and PDES permits. The municipal general order was originally adopted at the August 2017 board meeting, and currently there are 20 facilities enrolled under the municipal general order, with plans to enroll 2 more facilities under the proposed permit in the coming months if adopted. The following flow chart shows the process for eligible dischargers to be issued a notice of applicability under the municipal general order. First, the discharger submits a notice of intent or NOI to obtain coverage under the municipal general order. Then board staff reviews and analyzes the discharger's facility information and data to determine eligibility. If eligible, board staff prepare a tentative notice of applicability or NOA, and the NOA contains staff eligibility determination, effluent limits, and monitoring and reporting program to protect water quality. Next, a tentative NOA is provided to the public, including the discharger, United States Environmental Protection Agency or US EPA, and interested persons for a 15-day comment period. After the comment period is complete, board staff review any comments received and revise the tentative NOA if appropriate. And then the final NOA is issued by the executive officer. If significant concerns are raised through this process, the executive officer may schedule a hearing for the NOA where the board will consider the final NOA. Once the executive officer issues the NOA or the board approves it, the final signed NOA is provided to the discharger, US EPA, and interested persons and posted to the board's website. And then the discharger is now enrolled under the municipal general order. The municipal general order was updated to include a number of important changes. To start, the proposed MGO or municipal general order removes requirements based on the Basin Plan's narrative toxicity objective and implements requirements based on recently approved statewide toxicity provisions. In addition, the proposed municipal general order will add screening levels, effluent limitations, and routine effluent monitoring for a more comprehensive list of priority pollutants to include constituents that were previously not included in the MGO. This allows more flexibility to enroll facilities in the future that may have effluent limits or monitoring for any of these constituents. Since the adoption of the existing municipal general order, criteria for ammonia, mercury, and aluminum have been updated, and those changes for these criteria are also reflected in the proposed renewal. The proposed municipal general order also includes the addition of requirements for dischargers that apply under the State Water Board Recycled Water General Order to produce recycled water and wish to remain enrolled in the municipal general order. Site-specific requirements for land discharge at Donner Summit Public Utility District Wastewater Treatment Plant and Hamilton Gold Village Wastewater Treatment Plant have also been added to the proposed MGO to allow the 2 tertiary treatment facilities to qualify for the proposed municipal general order. And finally, the proposed municipal general order includes important updates based on recent Basin Plan amendments. These include pyrethroid pesticide monitoring and requirements to implement a pyrethroid management plan, if applicable, as well as requirements from the Central Valley Salinity Alternatives for Long-Term Sustainability or CV SALTS Basin Plan Amendment for dischargers to participate in either the conservative permitting approach or the alternative permitting approach of the Salt Control Program. Comments on the proposed NPDES permit were received from the 7 interested persons or entities listed here on this slide. All comments have been addressed and responses are included in the agenda package. The following slides are a discussion of the major comments received from the Central Valley Clean Water Association, or CVICWA, and Joanne Kipps, along with our staff responses. So major comment 1, board staff received a comment from CVICWA requesting a confirmation that existing enrollees under the municipal general order who are in the process of completing a material change to the facility would not be excluded from coverage or otherwise penalized based on the time of issuance of their notice of applicability. Board staff can confirm that the dischargers currently covered under the municipal general order will maintain coverage. Due to the changes in requirements of the proposed municipal general order, if a discharger is determined to no longer be eligible for coverage under the MGO, or if they no longer wish to be enrolled under this general order, they would still remain covered until their existing notice of applicability, under their existing notice of applicability until issuance of an individual permit. Next comment, CVICWA's next major comment identified that monitoring frequencies for a majority of the constituents are the same for both major and minor dischargers. And they requested an explanation for the different monitoring frequencies for the remaining limited number of constituents. Board staff reviewed the minimum monitoring frequencies for major and minor dischargers and confirmed CVICWA's findings that most minimum monitoring frequencies are the same after including that complete list of 126 California toxic rule constituents. Since the minimum frequencies are similar for both constituents, board staff combined both lists into a single list and defaulted to the lower frequency between major and minor dischargers if the frequency was different. Next major comment number 3. The next major comment came from Ms. Joanne Kipps. Ms. Kipps commented that the proposed municipal general order should be revised to require a 30-day public comment period for facilities that may threaten groundwater or all tentative notice of applicabilities. Board staff do not concur with increasing the public comment period for tentative NOAs from 15 to 30 days. The municipal general order is subject to a 30-day comment period, but the notice of applicabilities are not subject to public review. Notice of applicabilities implementing the already publicly reviewed municipal general order are significantly shorter and more focused documents than an individual permit. However, the board previously discussed granting a public review period at the hearing for the existing MGO based on comments received and committed to a 15-day public review period to allow interested persons to provide comments. In addition to this commitment, if significant concerns are raised, the executive officer may schedule a hearing for a specific NOA under the municipal general order. Upon request, the Central Valley Water Board will include Ms. Kipps on noticing of all tentative NOAs issued under this municipal general order, or specific facilities of interest if requested. The Central Valley Water Board can also extend the 15-day public noticing period if a request is made by an interested person who is able to substantiate the need for additional time for review of the tentative NOA. Major comment 4, Ms. Kipps also commented that the notice of intent, or NOI, which is the application submitted by a discharger for coverage under the municipal general order, should include legible flow schematics with specific information regarding flows and scaled site maps. She also commented that the NOI should include specific information regarding ponds to characterize influences to groundwater, including but not limited to dimensional data for ponds, liner characterization, and annual hydraulic loading of wastewater or sludge. Board staff concur in part with the requested changes. In order to make the notice of applicability within the proposed MGO more consistent and comparable to individual permits, board staff revised the NOI to require a site-specific map and flow schematic annotation requirements. Additional information requested by Ms. Kipps includes groundwater-related information beyond that provided by groundwater wells, such as property lines, soil classification, irrigation well location, sludge loading to groundwater, pond dimensions, etc., which would not be needed for enrollment under this municipal general order, but may be needed for other regulatory measures to appropriately regulate a groundwater discharge. Comment 5, lastly, Ms. Kipps commented that inadequately designed or maintained ponds can cause groundwater degradation in violation with the anti-degradation policy, and that unlined ponds and sludge storage do not constitute best practicable treatment or control or the best interest of the state of California. Due to the threat of groundwater quality, Ms. Kipps asked that facilities with unlined ponds and sludge storage be prohibited from coverage under the proposed municipal general order. Board staff do not concur that in all scenarios, groundwater degradation is a violation of the anti-degradation policy. Compliance with the general order requirements will result in the use of best practicable treatment or control to prevent impacts to groundwater. To the extent there is limited degradation of high quality waters, despite implementation of these requirements, the limited degradation is consistent with the maximum benefit to the people of the state. Additional text has been added to the fact sheet of the MGO discussing applicable groundwater anti-degradation requirements. Board staff do concur in part with restricting the frequency and duration of sewage discharges to unlined emergency storage ponds and requiring return of impounded sewage to the facility for treatment. The municipal general order allows short-term usage of unlined ponds by providing a 7-day grace period for monitoring requirements when using an unlined basin or pond. However, in situations where the discharger requires the use of an emergency pond for more than 7 days, it would still be able to protect surface water from raw or partially treated wastewater discharges by continuing the use of the unlined emergency storage pond without being in direct violation of the municipal general order. It is important to note here that most of the facilities currently enrolled under the MGO have lined storage basins or ponds. However, in cases where unlined ponds or sludge processing components are planned for long-term use, board staff have added eligibility criteria to the municipal general order requiring the discharger to obtain or be in the process of obtaining additional regulatory requirements that address operation, maintenance, monitoring, and other specific requirements for long-term operation of unlined ponds or sludge treatment process. Additional regulatory requirements for long-term use of unlined ponds or sludge processing components may include a future amendment to the municipal general order, individual NPDES permit, separate waste discharge requirements, or a Water Code Section 13267 order requiring additional monitoring and reporting. So the following minor late revisions were made to the proposed MGO. Staff revised the lined pond definition to a hydraulic conductivity standard and revised language to clarify toxicity reduction evaluation requirements. Also added was clarifying language regarding the requirement for submitting a notice of intent and continued coverage of notice of applicabilities issued under the existing municipal general order. This concludes my presentation. Staff recommends adoption of the proposed municipal general order, and staff would like to enter this presentation, the agenda package and board files for this order into the record. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good summary of this process. Are there any legal issues to address, Jessica?
No, this time.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll hear from any interested person wishes to comment. Is Ms. Kipps on the line waiting to
Yes.
comment? Okay. Ms. Kipps?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you again for the opportunity to address the board. And I wanted to convey to staff my appreciation for their changes to the municipal general order to recognize the threat to groundwater, potential threat to groundwater posed by the use of unlined ponds and unlined surfaces for the treatment or storage of wastewater, sludges, etc. In 2023, it should be recognized by staff and the board alike that unlined ponds are just not best practicable treatment and control when you're dealing with discharges to high quality groundwater. It's something of antiquity. I wish it were. So I appreciate that the MGO does not authorize the use of these unlined facilities. And I wanted to clarify, I wanted to get some information from staff exactly what they meant by a late revision, because it's not posted on the agenda. There was an issue of how they define hydraulic conductivity. And I just wanted to make sure they made that change, because the way it was worded, it was not correct. So if staff can do that. Anyway, and also I wanted to correct staff in terms of my comment that I recommended that the notices of applicability, if there's a groundwater discharge component of unlined ponds, even briefly for emergency storage, that the notices of applicability should include numerical groundwater limitations. I wasn't suggesting that the municipal general order itself include numerical groundwater limitations, but the notices of applicability have these so that you can have some enforcement action. If there's not a number, it's not as easy to enforce if there's a problem. So those are my two main comments. And again, thanks to staff for recognizing that the municipal general order should really be focused on the end of pipe discharge into a surface water and should not cover facilities that rely on unlined treatment ponds, unlined effluent storage ponds, unlined sludge lagoons, even unlined ponds for receiving waste activated sludge, which I was astonished that one city actually does, and it's authorized to do so under the existing municipal general order. So I've been trying to educate staff in the MPDS program about organic overloading, and I think I succeeded a little bit on that frontier. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Kipps. I appreciate your diligence in following up on all of these items that you've commented on today. And I know you don't get all of your points adopted, but you bring up good points, and I think you are continuing to educate staff and make everybody aware of crossing the T's and dotting the I's in this process. So thank you for that.
Excuse me, Chair Bradford. We have
Yes.
somebody here present that wishes to speak.
Okay.
Paul Bedore.
And
Chair
as he's coming
Bradford.
forth, I just again like to acknowledge Ms. Kipps for her comments. I mean, you're representing the public very, very well, and we commend you for you coming and making your statements. And action is being taken by staff to incorporate those comments where appropriate. Thank you very much. And thank you, staff.
And Chair Bradford, I just had a quick comment for the board's benefit.
Yes.
That last commenter had a question about the late revisions, and all those have not yet been posted online. They have been made available to the board members and members of the public that are here today.
Okay.
And it was emailed this morning to Ms. Kipps, but
Okay,
it
good.
may have been after
Thank you.
she was attending this meeting.
Okay, we have a comment from a person in the room. If you could identify yourself and confirm whether you've taken the oath?
Certainly. Good morning. My name is Paul Bedore. I'm with Robertson Bryan Incorporated. And I'm here this morning representing the cities of Roseville, the city of Placerville and El Dorado Irrigation District. I have taken the oath. RBI's office is located right here in Rancho Cordova, about a mile away.
Thank you.
I want to thank board staff for the collaborative efforts that they've committed to in terms of working through the comments that our firm and assisting our clients who are regulated under the general order address those comments. It's been a productive working relationship, very responsive, and we appreciate those efforts. And I'm only coming last minute to provide some comments. As I was sitting here this morning, I realized that the city of Roseville in their 2007 individual NPDES permits were required to determine an electrical conductivity standard that would protect the agriculture beneficial use of the area. So they did special studies for their 2 wastewater treatment plants to determine what electrical conductivity threshold would protect that downstream beneficial use. And then subsequent to that, in the 2013 NPDES permits, that threshold was then used to establish effluent limits on their 2 facilities that are now regulated under the general order. So the general order now is including two pathways to implement the Central Valley's new salt control program. There's the alternative pathway, which does not include hard and fast effluent limits for electrical conductivity. And then there's the conservative pathway that has hard and fast effluent limits. Roseville's treatment facilities qualify for the conservative path if their site-specific threshold is used as the limit, which is allowed under the basin plan objective. And so I just wanted clarification this morning that the language that is in the general order would allow that site-specific threshold to be used for their effluent limit without needing to amend the order in the future. As a lot of our clients know, and other dischargers that are regulated under this order, every time it's reopened for an amendment, there's 20 dischargers paying very close attention to what that changes. So if we can ensure that is addressed now rather than an amendment in the future, I'd appreciate that. So sorry for the late change.
Yeah, thank you.
Staff, and for your diligence on looking into that.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. There was language on page 104 as I responded, but I do recall the city of Roseville is in a special situation because of their site-specific study that they did. I don't know. It would be possible. I mean, this is a massive project. So my suggestion would be if we can stick around for a few minutes and see if we can get something together. For what it's worth, there's a few other places within. I think the city of Atwater has something a little different for one of its treatments. So there's a specific call out that we can make for that particular circumstance on page 104. If it's the pleasure of the board, we can pause for a few minutes and see if permitting staff can meet and confer and see if they can come up with something.
Yeah, we're all fine with that for sure. Maybe you have some language you could suggest too, if you want to cuddle with these guys.
Yeah, I think we can.
So want to say 10, how long do you think?
I think 10 minutes-ish would be good. Maybe 15 to be safe.
Yeah, why don't we say 12:25? We'll give you almost 20.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ready to roll? Okay, are you guys ready? All right, why don't we reconvene? So I see you've added some language here.
Yes. So this is for context. These would be proposed late changes to order section VAIB 8 in little Roman numerals, however it's appropriate to say that, and that's the effluent limitation section. And so this would be noting within subdivision A, except as set forth in subdivision C below, and adding this subparagraph C, which would read for dischargers where a site-specific numeric value has been developed and adopted into the basin plan as a numeric interpretation of the basin plan's narrative AGR objective, the board shall continue to apply that value as an effluent limitation. And then the next revision would be to the facts, the corresponding section within the fact sheet, similar language to note this change.
Right. Okay. It looks reasonable to me. Do you have any?
My thanks to Paul for identifying that
Yeah,
and for the team for coming together and putting something together so quick. I want to emphasize that if they weren't able to do this and if it wasn't identified, we may be in the position of having to either do a whole nother hearing to amend this item or a whole nother hearing to do an individual NPDES permit and everything that entails. So half hour is kind of worth it to make
Thank you,
this
Paul.
happen.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Thank you, Bailey.
Yeah, everybody. That was quick. Okay. So I think we can move for a motion to approve agenda item 11, the municipal general order. the
And just
MGO.
verifying that there's no more commenters.
No more commenters. No more
No additional
commenters.
comments.
No, no additional comments.
No.
All right.
So we need a motion to approve agenda item 11 for the MGO, including the late revisions that were made today.
I'll recommend approval. I mean, I move to approve of the item 11 with the late revisions.
Second that.
Okay, Mindy, could you take the roll?
Board Member Yang,
Aye.
Board Member Kadara,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Aye.
and Chair Bradford.
Yes. Okay, and then I think we're almost done here. Agenda item 12 was actually moved to the consent calendar. And so I think we don't have to do anything on that one. That was already approved. So with that, I believe we're done. Adjourn the meeting.
We are adjourned until the August board meeting. It will be on August 10th and 11th. We're still figuring out whether it is going to be a 2-day board meeting or a 1-day board meeting. That is the meeting where we will have a presentation to honor Clay Rogers. And I will note, that's the meeting where we have our end of year reports. Denise, you'll be happy to know all of the program managers are working on their videos so that we have the videos back again, first time since 2016, updating about a 3 to 5 minute video describing the work in each of the program areas that we'll be putting on the webpage. So that'll actually form the bulk of my report back to the board is a series of videos, essentially to publicize our work and to have a little bit of an outward facing, easily digestible kind of component there. So.
Patrick, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
For Clay's honoring presentation, is there like a short video that will be honoring him? Is that a possibility?
Not a video for that, but
okay.
Okay, well, thanks everybody again. And thanks for putting this meeting room together, Bob and Jean and everybody. And we'll see you in August.
All right.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Hey, board members, you gotta hear the